Morning class. Uh, well, I'm recording this in the morning. I don't know when you're watching it, but it's morning right now. This is our video for lesson 87. I didn't get to 87 or 89 in class, so I'm posting videos on those two lessons. In my lesson, in my video for lesson 89, I'll probably also do a quick review of lateral surface area. It won't take too long, I promise. And then in class, we're going to review algebraic phrases and sentences. Those are really good to get the hang of. It's like a brain teaser. It takes a little bit of work, but once you've got it, you'll be able to do those in Algebra 1 and moving forward. So, all right, so 87 is talking about properties of algebra. These are some of those universal truths that math likes to throw at us once in a while and teach us that there are just some things that are true and they never change. And as Catholics, we know this anyway, right? So 87 is talking about some properties. I don't know, they have to do with properties that we will utilize when solving algebra problems. Sometimes you're not aware that there's a property that goes along with the action that you're performing. In lesson 84, they went over properties of equality, and that dealt with pretty much teaching you that whatever you do to one side of an equation, you must do to the other side of an equation to keep things equal. That's a very basic principle in algebra. Today's properties are, if you look here in the left column, the commutative, that's not commutative, there's no N in commutative, so practice pronouncing that, commutative, associative, reflexive, symmetric, and transitive. Okay, these are properties that you're going to find very simple, but you will need to know them because there will be problems where they will ask you, so what property was applied here in this problem? And that's what the practice will ask you today. So in lesson 87. So let's start at the top with a commutative property. All the commutative property teaches us is that, A plus B equals B plus A. On the right, okay, in the middle, I tell you what the property expresses, and then on the right column here, I give you an example of it. So all that tells us is that 7 plus 3 is equal to 3 plus 7. If we have two numbers, we can add them in any order. That's what that tells us. Let's look at the associative property. That tells us that if we are adding, then we can add in any order. We can associate numbers first. We can add A and B, and then add C, or we can add B and C, and then add A on. So associative means we're associating A and B first, and then adding C, and on the right-hand side, we're associating B and C, and then adding A. And that's called the associative property. And that just tells us that if you add 7 and 3, you'll get 10. If you add 5, you'll then get 15. On the right-hand side, if you add 3 and 5, you get 8. And then you add 7, and that's still 15. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the reflexive property. It tells us that A equals A. That is 7 equals 7, or 8 equals 8. I know that's a shocking principle. So I don't think they go over too much. It's not something you really need to know because everybody pretty much knows it. But nonetheless, oh my gosh, my cat is in my coffee. Sorry. If you saw coffee splatter on the screen. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, reflexive property just means that a number equals itself. The symmetric property tells us that if A equals B, then B equals A. What does that mean? If 10 is equal to 7 plus 3, then 7 plus 3 is equal to 10. This just shows us that we can flip-flop sides. I do that sometimes when I've been doing algebra problems in class. I'll say, if we do a cross multiplication and we come up with, say, 10 equals 2x, I will typically say I like to have x on the left, and I'll flip-flop those. That's all the symmetric property is showing us. The transitive property says that if A is B and B is C, then A is C. So if 7 plus 3 equals 10 and 10 equals 5 plus 5, then we know that 7 plus 3 is 5 plus 5, right? 10 equals 10. All right, those are the properties. Now I'm going to do a problem similar to what they're going to have you do in the practice and show you how they'll ask you to apply, or at least know which properties are being used. Okay. So I oversimplify my problems when I do them for you. So just tiny bit tougher. Oh my gosh, that cat got coffee all over my book and everything. Okay, so we have 17 plus 22. Again, this is very similar to what you'll be doing in the practice. Plus 3 plus 8. They will ask you to simplify this and state which properties you're using. So the first thing I would do is I would, when you're adding things, if you look at a problem, you probably do this mentally without realizing it, and you ought to do it. You might say, oh, well, that's 20, and I see that's 30. Oh, 30 plus 20 is 50. So in our minds, we already like to simplify. We like to find, long ago when you learned addition, they used to teach you to look for tens, look for 7 and 3 and 8 and 2 when you're adding a column of numbers. And so it's the same thing. We tend to group things together in our minds that are easier to add, and that simplifies our problem for us. But we're going to go ahead and move these. We're going to associate these. Okay, I'm just going to say we're going to move those. Okay. All right. So I'm sorry. I'm just making sure. So this is the commutative property, which tells us, we can add in any order. All right. If I have 17 plus 22 plus 3 plus 8, I can turn that into 17 plus 3 plus 22 plus 8. I can add those numbers in any order. And they'll ask you to write that. That's the commutative. All right, next step. I'm going to add 17 plus 3, and I'm going to add 22 and 8. Okay, so I guess I could do 17 plus 3 plus 22, but I'm not going to do it left to right because it's easier to add 17 and 3 and get 20 and add 22 and 8 and get 30. So when I group these like this, when I'm grouping them into my preferred groupings, that is the associative property, okay? That's the associative property. That tells me I can group things together when I add in the groupings that I prefer, okay? And then that just leaves me with 20 plus 30, and that's 50, and that's my answer. So there's only two properties that they wanted me to pick out here, and that was the commutative, which tells me I can add in any order, and the associative, which tells me I can group numbers as I prefer in a list of add-ins that are being added together. Okay, those are called add-ins, if you recall. All right, so the commutative and the associative, you'll find, are the two properties that are most focused on in math. They'll be referred to more often. Reflexive is obviously very simple. Symmetric, is also pretty basic. Transitive maybe a little more than reflexive and symmetric. It's just slightly less obvious. So anyway, that's lesson 87. They're just going to give you one problem, very similar to what I just worked for you here on the right-hand side. Okay. So let's see. I guess that's it, guys. I will do a review, like I said, of lateral surface area when I post video for lesson 89. All right. Signing off.